In this third episode of the leadership template, we're going to look at the actual template. So I've created some practical skills, partly again based off what John Maxwell teaches, and just some experiences to help us think through how do you and I grow at each of the 5 levels. So in the first episode, we talked about the difference between leadership and management. We've talked about self-leadership. We've talked about servant leadership. We've talked about centered leadership. Let's look at a diagram that kind of exhibits what leadership actually accomplishes. Or what is the point or purpose of leadership, or how does it function? Again, I'm borrowing here from John Maxwell, but he would say, imagine that people have a leadership level between 0 and 10, and you have lots of 6s and 7s in a group. Everybody's pretty much the same. What happens is that people go in different directions. I think it starts off, I think in the book of Judges, that Israel had no king and everybody did as they saw fit. So people just do their own thing. What happens is then a leader comes, someone who's a little bit more of a leader, got a bit more experience, or just a little bit better at moving things forward, more of a visionary, and they say, we're going to go in this direction. Essentially what happens is gradually over a period of time, 2 things happen. People begin to move in the same direction, and then 1 or 2 people who don't like the direction will disappear, which is sad, but it happens. That's what happens. And as we move in a new direction, other people join us, and those people who join us move in that same direction. And it's difficult. Sometimes there have been times in my life and my ministry when I've said, okay, there's a new direction. I remember for years and years and years, everybody on Pais signed up for 1 year. And after a while, I realized it's really hard to build when your key leaders sign up for 1 year at a time. You don't know who you've got. So I sat all our leaders down in a room once and said, from now on, you need to make a decision, either finish with us at the end of the year or sign up to just be long-term until God says otherwise to you. And I remember like a few weeks later, I got everybody together to say who decided to finish at the end of the year and who decided to make this open-ended commitment. And it was about 50-50. We lost about half of our guys, really great people as well. And only about half of them decided to stay on with an open-ended agreement. And I remember when I went round and said who was staying and who was going, at one point I mentioned one person was going and somebody else in the group literally went, oh, Pais is finished. Pais is finished. That was 20 years ago. So people come and people go. Being a leader, again, the key thing is to be centered, knowing where you're going and what God is leading you into. So the other problem is as you grow other leaders, if you don't grow yourself, then you're back to square one where everybody's just doing their own thing. So again, it comes back to this escalator idea where you're going one way or the other. You can't stay where you are. So we need to keep ourselves growing, to keep leading people and growing them. So the first level of leadership starts with position, and the key there is rights. People will do what you have the right to ask them to do. And how do we fulfill this level? Well, there's still things to do, even though this is the basic part of leadership or the foundational level. And actually, it's more about fellowship than it is simply leadership, because what you're trying to do here is make sure you understand what you're being asked to lead people in. So 3 things you need to do. Know your role, know how your role fits into the bigger picture, and fulfill your role holistically and with consistency. And they'll be able to expect the things that we talked about in the previous episode. So this is a foundational, fundamental level. It's about fellowship. What am I supposed to do in this role, and how do I make sure I hold people accountable for what they do? But then we want to move on, don't we? We want to move more than just beyond simply people doing what they have to do, to where people really want to express themselves, where people really want to do more and go the extra mile. So then we move on to permissional leadership, which is based on relationship. And this is where we engage outside of our role. We show people we care about them more than for what they simply do for us. We have time, we spend energy, maybe resources in caring for people more than we have to, if you like. We have to include people in our journey. Make sure they know how we're feeling. We connect with them on a relational level. We see their issues as our issues. So yes, it might not be an issue in work, it might be outside of work, And we can't fix everybody's problems, but is there something we can do to help them in some way? I would suggest if you do help people, ask them just to keep it to themselves. You don't want people becoming jealous or thinking, well, why did you do that for them and you can't do it for me? So also, you don't want it to be a thing where you're just doing it for show, but you want to care genuinely for others as best as you possibly can. And instigate or join activities outside of set hours. Again, being with people is important. The best teams I know have fun outside of just work hours. Over the years, we've done that many, many times. For me, it's been easier leading a church and it has Pais because you have easier access to people and you can do fun activities together. So with Pais, we have to be a little bit more intentional about that, I think. Again, there are all sorts of benefits that we mentioned in the second episode. So this is where people like to be together, they feel cared for, but maybe we're not seeing things really happen, and people can get pretty frustrated. So the third level is production, and at this level, we're seeing results. And this is really important if you want to keep people who want to really help you achieve what God has called you to do. The problem with the previous level is that people want to be together, they're having fun together, they're enjoying their time together, but you're going to lose people who are higher achievers, who some people might call quality people, if you stay at the second level. I was speaking to someone last week who's in Australia, a young lady working with Pais, and we were just chatting about different things. I was seeing how she was doing, thanking her for all the hard work, and we got onto the subject, probably because I'm like to be awkward, of bringing up if she was going out or dating with anybody. And this is what she said to me. She said, well, I feel like I'm a high achiever. I don't want people from my nation because they're not high achievers. I want them from Australia. So she basically threw an entire generation of men from her nation under the bus. But it was interesting because what she was basically saying was this: if I'm going to achieve something, I want to be around other people who want to achieve something as well. And there's an old English phrase which is birds of a feather flock together, or birds of a feather, I should say, flock together. You know, if people are really positive, they want to be around other positive people. If people are really negative, they find other people to be negative around. So at this level, we need to move to production and get results. How do you do that? Well, we implement and inspect goals. We are a driving force. We consistently communicate strategy and vision, and we know and do the things that give a high return. So it's our responsibility to set vision. Remember, leaders set expectations, managers simply manage expectations. We want to regularly share vision, regularly share about the goals, reminding people. It can be a bit annoying sometimes because you're saying the same thing. If you can say it in different ways, it's better, but you have to keep putting the vision before people. The Bible says when people lose their vision, they throw off self-discipline. And that's where you get so many of our problems. So this is great, but it's maybe dependent too much on you. It's centered around you. So then we look at the fourth level of leadership, which is personnel. And this is about reproduction. So again, what we're doing here is we're leaders who are raising up leaders. Well, how do you do that? How do you raise up other leaders? What are the basic steps to doing that? Well, we raise expectations and then we raise resources. In a practical way, you would expose key leaders to growth opportunities. You may find they have a real gift in or a real passion for something you're not really an expert in. So you find other places they can go to learn that, or maybe other courses they can do. Some kind of growth opportunity. Maybe you put them in a situation where they have to grow into that situation. You highlight and applaud those who do better than you. You don't hide it. You don't feel insecure. Saul was insecure when David became popular. We shouldn't do that. We should highlight that. We should applaud that. We should be genuinely thrilled about that and show it, because that's going to encourage people to grow up within our leadership. Thirdly, we raise expectations and raise resources. I've mentioned that already, but the way you do that is key, because you have to do it as a balance. If you only raise expectations, you're going to burn people out. If you only raise resources, people are going to become more entitled. Over the years, Pais has raised lots more resources for people. For the first 10 years, nobody on Pais, maybe 15 years, nobody on Pais got paid at all. And then we began to raise resources. What we noticed, though, is that people started to ask us for things that they never used to ask us for. So we need to raise expectations as well. It's a careful balance, and I think it's a key thing for us to be focusing on. Again, there are all sorts of benefits. Quality people become leaders. They stay around you. They take off some of the burden, and they bring in new vision, which is fantastic. Finally, we talk about pinnacle and respect. This is a wonderful level if you can get there. The question is, how do you do this? Well, the reality is you don't do anything really. There's nothing new. There's no particular skill set to this. This happens because of time. You're consistently doing what you've done at an excellent level for a long period of time. You keep practicing the first 4 levels. You keep submitting to accountability. And you keep consistent when things are good and when they're bad. They say great leaders excel in crises. They say that great leaders stay humble, even though maybe people are saying nice things about them. King David, when he became king, he had money printed that became very popular. Some gold coins and silver coins. And they were popular for 2 reasons. One is he made sure that they were proper weight. They really were the value of what they said they were. So people wanted their coins, apparently history tells us, more than any other coin. But the other thing that made them popular was, on one side was David's tower, a symbol of his influence, and on the other side was a shepherd's bag and a shepherd's staff, because he was reminding people, yes, I'm king now, but I had very humble beginnings. And so how do you reach this pinnacle where people are coming to you, where people are drawing from you, where you become kind of symbolic for what you do, where you really influence people outside of what you actually do? How does that happen? Time. And some of the benefits, again, your influence becomes bigger than what you do. Your story will become symbolic of what you do, and your influence will last beyond what you do. So let me give you a quick example of this. So these are the 5 levels as we look at them: rights, relationship, results, reproduction, and respect. And there are 3 laws that we need to bear in mind. The first one is this: you cannot skip a level. And that's where you really have to watch your personality. If you are a real people person, that's great, but you might try and skip positional to being a people person. You don't take your authority. I remember some guys coming into a school once in Manchester, and the first thing they said to the students was, "We're not teachers, we're here to be your friends." Well, that lasted good for about 5 minutes, and in a minute the children became a bit noisy. They tried to discipline them, and it didn't work because they'd lost their authority. So step 1, be the leader. Step 2, then be relational with people. Because when you have to discipline people, they still need to know you're still the leader. Some people skip permissional and go on straight to results. Well, I want to make things happen. I want to get things going. Well, people are going to get burnt out. People are not going to do the more you hope them to do. So there is a process, there is a step. Secondly, you're not at a level because of 1 or 2 situations. Maxwell says this, is you're not at a level, just because people come and ask you for advice doesn't mean you're at pinnacle. It's not 1 or 2 situations. It's things where these results are consistent for a long period of time. And the third law is that you are not at a level anywhere, but at different level. You're not at a level everywhere, but at different levels with different groups. Because remember, influence and leadership is not about what you do, it's about what others do. So you may be in one place at production and somewhere else at permission. When I was in England, when we moved to America, in England I was fairly well known. I would get asked places. I was probably at quite a higher level of the leadership levels with Pais in the UK. And then I got on a plane and started from scratch again in Texas. And I was given a position. I worked with a large church, and with the people I led, I was back at positional. So I would talk to people in England at one level, but I would be at a different level in Texas. Does that make sense? Because it's based on the people you're with. So there's no entitlement here. Just because you want to achieve something, you can't go to a new group and expect them to behave because of the way you've done things for 20, 30, 40 years. We have to start going through those levels. It's really important. Let me give you an example of how we can actually implement these 5 levels. What would that look like? So let me talk about a youth team, a Pais youth team. Let me give you an example of what that might look like. So the first level, they would implement the full vision and methodology of Pais. So the team leader will make sure they do what they're supposed to do as a Pais team. The second level, they would engage with youth outside of Pais hours. So yes, they might set up some Pais events. That's not going to get them to relationship. They've got to show willing. They've got to show that outside of work hours, maybe giving up their Saturdays to spend time with young people is going to make a difference. Doing more than what is their job. A third level is that youth are being saved, baptized, and integrated. At that point, they're seeing results. But they're going to have to be driven. They're going to have to set examples. They're going to have to do some of the things in the template we talked about before. At the fourth level, youth might be joining the Youth Academy. For those who are watching this video who don't know this, we have the Youth Academy. So we reach young people and give them the opportunity to become leaders, to lead Bible study groups, to be disciples of others, to head up missions organizations for their school or their community. So at this level, that's what we might see. And then finally, a team might have other teams copying them, inviting that team leader to other teams. Can you show us what you did? That's where they might be a pinnacle leader, if you like. So even a young person, maybe 19, 20 years old, who's leading a team in Texas or somewhere around the world, can go through these 4 levels if we do the things that we need to do. If we're not simply driven by our personality, but we do the things we want to do, and we do some of the things we don't want to do. So I want to encourage you to take a look at the template. I'm going to encourage you to download the document, discuss the questions, and disciple others in what we have learnt.
Hello, we hope you enjoyed this episode of Livewire. Did you know we have conferences all over the world? Please email us at info@paismovement.com and we can get you connected.